Q&A session now, inshallah. Any of the brothers, if you have any questions, just raise your hands and ask the question. Please keep them related to the topic. And any of the sisters upstairs, please, if you want to ask any questions, send them down on a piece of paper with one of the children, inshallah, and they can pass them along. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Two questions related to what you said. One of which is related to, if you can clarify for the brothers, ibadah, worship, what does it actually mean? What's the definition and what does it encompass? We all assume we know. Some people think everything you do is worship, and others go to the extremes of, it's only certain acts. And the second one was in relation to where is Allah? There are Muslims, quite a large number of Muslims, who believe He's everywhere. He's physically everywhere. Wherever you are, wherever you go, Allah is everywhere. Where does it?
Jazakallah. Two questions. What is the meaning of worship of Allah Jalla wa Ala? And the question is about people that misunderstand this belief in Allah, about where is Allah. So inshallah, in answer to the first part, ibadah, worship, is a collective word. It's a collective word for all acts of worship which Allah Jalla wa Ala is pleased with, which He has ordered with. This worship can only be done according to the Sharia, according to what Allah Jalla wa Ala has legislated and the Prophet ﷺ has legislated in the Sunnah. Nobody can add to any act of worship, and nobody can take anything away from any act of worship. So this is worship generally. I don't know how much more you want me to go into that. Worship of Allah Jalla wa Ala, praying, fasting, dua, hajj, jihad fi sabilillah. Every act of worship is explained, has a method, a particular method of how to do it. It's not left to your own devices to carry out that act of worship however you want. So the prayer, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Pray as you have seen me pray. Hajj, he said, take from me the manasik of Hajj, take from me the rights of Hajj. So we have to do Hajj according to how the Prophet ﷺ taught us to do it, specifically. Same with fasting. We can't fast however we want. Same with zakat. We can't give zakat however we want. Even jihad. Jihad has rules, regulations, methodology, has conditions, and so on and so forth. And this is an act of worship. You can't go and just do jihad however you want, blow up these people, suicide bombs, this, etc. This is not left to devices, our own devices, to decide how we're going to carry out any act of worship. So every act of worship is defined, is explained by the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, for any act of worship to be accepted, it has to fulfill the two conditions. And that is, number one, it should be done for Allah Jalla wa Ala, His sake alone. You can't make any shirk. You can't divert any act of worship to the creation. So you can't slaughter, make dhabh for other than Allah, or you can't do it for a bir or a fakir or a grave. You can't make sajda to a bir or a fakir or somebody's feet. You can't make any acts of worship or tawaf around a grave. You can't do these things. You have to do the act of worship specifically for Allah Jalla wa Ala. So that's the first condition. And if you fulfill that condition, you have to fulfill a second condition for that act of worship to be accepted. That second condition is that the act of worship has to be in accordance to the Sharia, accordance to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And as I mentioned earlier, and you can find the evidence for this in the ayah of the Quran, وَمَنْ يُرِيدُ لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. That whoever truly wishes to meet Allah on the Day of Judgment, then let him let him do righteous deeds, and there is no more righteous deeds than there is the Sharia, Sunnah. So the action should be in accordance to the Sunnah, and let him not associate partners with Allah in the slightest. So if you fulfill these two conditions, then you'll meet Allah Jalla wa Ala with your deeds accepted on the Day of Judgment. So that's regarding worship. As for where is Allah, then yes, the Muslims have, many Muslims have gone astray on this very first pillar of Iman. The first pillar of Iman is believing in Allah. And from this, the things about Allah Jalla wa Ala where they have gone astray and deviated in, is that they say Allah Jalla wa Ala is part of this creation. He's part of this creation. So there are Muslims who say that Allah is in this individual but not in that individual. Allah is in my heart and my mind. He's everywhere. When you say Allah Jalla wa Ala is everywhere, then na'udhu billah, Allah, you're literally saying He's in our pocket, He's here, He's everywhere. This is the belief of the Sufiya, the Brelwiya. This is the belief of heretical sects in Islam. Allah Jalla wa Ala is separate from His creation. He is not in this world. He is separate. He created the creation, but He is not here. We understand Allah Jalla wa Ala in two ways: bidhatihi wa bi asma sifatihi. Allah Jalla wa Ala bidhatihi Himself, He is above His arsh. Allah Jalla wa Ala said in the Quran, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ, and then He established above the arsh. So we know where He is. Our Lord is where? He is above His arsh bidhatihi, in Himself. However, His names and His attributes exist everywhere. He hears all, He sees all. Not a leaf falls down except with His permission and with His knowledge. Not a raindrop comes down except with His permission and with His knowledge. So through His names and His attributes, you could see them in the signs of His creation. But as for Him Himself, He is separate from His creation. But the Muslims, unfortunately, they say some of the Muslims, the deviant ones, they say that Allah Jalla wa Ala bidhatihi, He is present here. And I will relate to you, an incident. I saw this with my own eyes. There was one sheikh who went to Devil's Valley in America to do dawah, and he had a lot of reverts around him, with him, and they were all females, and he was traveling from village to village giving dawah to the non-Muslims. And the clip I saw was where he was lying back on his sofa, and these revert ladies were around him by his feet, massaging his feet and asking him, tell us, how did you get Allah inside you? And he said that, carry on massaging, I will tell you how I got Allah in my heart and my mind, and how He is everywhere. These are the type of things that, this I saw this myself, and you only have to look into some of the books of the Deoband as well. The extreme, the original Deoband, they say, one of their Imams, I can't remember his name, one of the Imams, early Imams in Mecca, who used to reside in Mecca, he said that by saying who, Allahu, by continuously saying this, you can achieve Allah inside you. This is their beliefs. They hold this as their aqidah, their belief. And this is strange. It's not from the way of Islam. Allah Jalla wa Ala has clearly told us where He is in Himself. He's above His arsh. And if we say Allah is in His creation, what difference are we from the Christians and the Hindus and the fire worshippers? The Christians could not believe in Allah as the unseen, so they had to make Allah in Jesus. They had to see Him, feel Him, touch Him, then they believed. We Muslims have belief in the unseen, that we can't see Allah, but we believe He's there. Christians couldn't do that. Hindus, Sikhs, fire worshippers, they can't do that neither. They have to make Allah in the stone, in statues and idols, in the creation. For them to fathom the thought that God is unseen, they say, oh no, we can't accept that. So this is the distinctive factor between us and them. You want to believe in Allah, be a Muslim, we have to believe that in the unseen, that Allah is separate from His creation. I hope inshallah that's enough for that. That question, inshallah. If you have a family member that does sihr on you, and other family members that are always with these family members, is it still sinful to lessen your ties with them? Okay. First and foremost, you have to establish 100% that this family member of yours has conducted some sihr on you. Because from my experience, I find a lot of people assume and they suspect, but they have no concrete, real evidence. Okay, that's the first thing. Sihr, ikhwan, is magic. A form of magic which people do sometimes through tying knots, sometimes by sending a jinn to trouble a person. Magic. So if you look into that, you'll find more details about what that is. But sihr, you have to find out 100% sure that this person is definitely guilty of this crime first. That's the first thing. If you've established that this person has done this sihr, you then have to establish whether that person understands that sihr is haram in Islam, that this is a punishable sin in Islam, that by taking off the head, it's a very serious crime, it's a major sin. Because there are Muslims today who believe sihr is permissible. We have a Maulvi just down the road from our Masjid, a very famous Masjid just down the road from us, who gives taweez, he uses jinn to take out other jinn, he makes magic, he uses magic to fight magic. And this is what he does. And he thinks it's permissible in Islam. And there are hundreds of, maybe thousands of people in our own town, in Luton, who believe this is allowed, this is permissible. And they're ignorant, they don't understand. So you have to establish the hujjah, against these people first. If you find the person's ignorant, then teach them, educate them. As for then, lessening your family ties, if anybody's doing seher, then yes, obviously it's permissible in such a situation to lessen the family ties there, keep relations with them, such that you can give them dawah, such that you can correct them, such that you can forbid the evil and enjoy good. And that should be the limit, and be kind and nice to them there. Don't cut off completely until you've established clearly that this person knows what they're doing, and they believe it's halal, and proof has been established upon them. In such a situation, I don't even say a person is a Muslim. And you cut off your ties and you warn against such a person, whether they be your brethren, your brother, or your uncle, or a stranger. And Allah Jalla wa Ala knows best.
What's the difference between a Muslim and a mu'min?
What's the difference between a Muslim and a mu'min? Allah Jalla wa Ala explains in Surah Hujurat. He says that the desert Arabs say they believe. Say, O Muhammad, that they tell them, O Muhammad, that they do not believe, as Iman has not yet entered into their hearts. So Islam is when you utter the Shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. By that you have entered Islam and you are a Muslim, but you are not a believer until Iman enters your heart. Iman in Allah, His angel, in Allah, His messengers, His books, His angels, life after death, and the qadr, predestination, the good of it and the bad of it. Iman has not entered our hearts until we single Allah out to be worshipped alone, and we don't associate no partners with Him whatsoever. So all the things I mentioned in my talk today, that we believe in the hereafter, you have to believe in that. Believe it as much as you believe that if you put your finger into a fire, it's going to burn your finger. So you abstain. You don't put your finger anywhere near the fire. That's how much we have to believe in Allah. And then we can say we have Iman. Iman has entered into our hearts. Believing in the messengers, that they came with a message. When you say you believe in the messenger, you know what that means? That means you single Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam out to be followed. You follow his sunnah. Sunnah becomes apparent you follow his sayings, all of them, without exception. You follow his actions. You follow his approvals. You follow his manners, his character. You adorn them in yourselves, his appearance. This is believing in the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Believing in Allah means you're believing in that He's going to hold you to account for your bad deeds and He's going to reward you for your good deeds. Believing in Allah Jalla wa Ala means that you believe that there's punishment in the grave and there's na'im in the grave. So when Iman enters your heart, then you are a believer in Allah Jalla wa Ala. We ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to make us all of those who believe. If your family are all non-Muslims and want nothing to do with you, after numerous attempts, what is the best thing to do? Again, if your family is a non-Muslim, just try to give dawah to them or through your actions, through your behavior. They want nothing to do with you because why? Because you've become a Muslim, you've left their faith. Okay, no problem, don't tell them about Islam per se and Aqidah and Tawheel and Allah and the Messenger. Give them dawah through your actions. Let them see your character change, your behavior, the way you are with them. And then you'll become the most beloved person to them, and then they'll start giving you their ears. So listen, so they will listen to you. Again, obviously, remember one thing, that guidance is not in your hands. It's in the hands of Allah Jalla wa Ala alone. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ حَبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Verily, you cannot guide whom you love, but Allah guides whom He wants. Allah said, لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ مُسَيْطِرٌ. You're not a controller over them. You can't control these things, these matters. You can't guide whom you love. Allah, the guidance is in the hands of Allah. Your job is to relay a message only. It is وَمَا عَلَيْكَ إِلَّا بَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ. There's nothing upon you except to relate a clear message. That's your job. Relate the message to the people. But again, if they don't want to hear, if they don't want to hear the message, then khalas. Give them action through your dawah. Give them dawah through your actions. There's another question here which says, is there any authentic narration that if you pray 40 salah in a row in Masjid al-Nabawi, you will be free from the hellfire and hypocrisy? There is something similar to this, but I can't remember. Sheikh Wajid can explain answer this question about Salat. 40 Salat Masjid Nabawi.
The narration concerning Masjid Nabawi specifically, there's no correct narration, it's not authentic.
Okay. So what is saying? There's no authentic narration that you can pray 40 Salat in the Prophet's Masjid and you will be free from hellfire and hypocrisy. Jazakallah khair. Number two. And can you do Umrah or Hajj on behalf of a dead person, whether dead or alive? I thought you couldn't, but she asked me to ask you. Yes, yeah, you can do Umrah and you can do Hajj on behalf of a deceased person or on behalf of a live person. However, the person who's deceased, he should not have done it while he was alive, and you can do a Hajj for that person who's deceased. As for the one who's alive, then he has to be incapacitated, unable to do the Hajj, and then you can perform the Hajj for him, because if he has the ability, then he has to do the Hajj himself. And Allah knows best. Brother there, right? Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. I just want to know about the bid'ah, right? So what's the difference between the bid'ah or the aqidah and on the ibadah? Because some of the group, as you mentioned about the Sufi, when they do something, they say this is a bid'ah hasan, for example.
Okay.
So just want to know,
Okay.
is that Prophet believe any bid'ah hasan?
Okay. Question is asked, what is bid'ah? Please shed some light on bid'ah, and is there such thing as bid'ah hasana? Bid'ah is innovation. Linguistically, it means innovation. Technically, it means to innovate something in the religion of Islam, that which was not there before. Allah Jalla Wala said in the Quran that this day I have completed my religion, I have completed my favor upon you, I named your religion for you Al-Islam. So the religion is complete. It's not permissible for us to invent anything in the religion, in any act of worship, after we understand this ayah, after the religion has been completed. So innovation can be in time, it can be in place, it can be in specific, it can be in general. Meaning, for example, time. We do Ramadan, we fast in the month of Ramadan. Ramadan fast. If somebody says, no, I'm going to do the 30 fast, not in Ramadan, but in Shawwal, we say this is bid'ah, innovation. So we have to do things in according to time, not take them out of time. Place. You know, if somebody says we want to do Hajj in Pakistan, I know some people do that. They do Hajj in Pakistan. We know this. And we said this is wrong. Hajj takes place where? In Mecca and in the rites in Arabia. So this becomes a bid'ah of place. Bid'ah in time, place, specific and general. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Kuntum anhaakum an ziyarat al-qubur, fazuruha fa innaha yudhakkirukum al-akhirah." Or kama qala ﷺ, he said that I used to prevent you from visiting the graves, but visit them now, for indeed they remind you of the hereafter. So some people, what they do is they go to the graves specifically on Eid, every Eid, or they go to the graves specifically on Shabi Barat, at a particular Nisf Sha'ban, half of Sha'ban, they go visit the graves. So they make this action of visiting the graves specific to a particular time. But they've taken the general, and they use as evidence this hadith which I quoted, it was a general hadith, and they've made it specific. So if you take something which the Prophet said generally, and you make it specific, you've now invented it in Islam, you've innovated. And the other way around, if there's something specific that the Prophet said, and then you make it general, yeah, then, you know, this is also an innovation. So innovation, ikhwan, there is all innovation is bad. The Messenger ﷺ used to stand in Jummah, every Jummah, and he used to say, وَكُلَّ بِدَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ وَكُلَّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. That every innovation is a sending astray, and every sending astray will lead you to the hellfire, or its companion to the hellfire. So there is no such thing as a good innovation. If he said every innovation is a sending astray and every innovation is sending to hellfire, how can we say there is a good innovation? Those people who say that there is such thing as a bid'ah hasana, a good innovation, they use the narration of Umar al-Khattab when he came and he saw the people making taraweeh after the Prophet ﷺ had passed away in Jama'ah in the Prophet ﷺ's Masjid. He looked at them and he said, what a good bid'ah this is. So they said, look, if you said this is a good bid'ah, that means there must be something as a good bid'ah. But what they do is they apply this word, this term, good bid'ah, in the wrong place. Umar al-Khattab, what he meant by good bid'ah means something what a good revival this is. What a good revival this is. A good bid'ah. The only good bid'ah that is allowed in Islam is something which has its essence or origination in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It can't be something completely new. So the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed the Taraweeh for 3 nights in the Masjid. And the people prayed behind him. And then he stopped. And when the people came and said, why did you stop? He said, because I feared that it might become an obligation upon you, so I stopped it. So the sunnah was there. Praying in the Masjid, praying in Jama'at, the Taraweeh. It was there. So when al-Khattab saw this and he said, what a good bid'ah this is, no way did he intend by this, what a new thing this is, because it wasn't new, was it? The Messenger did it before. So when we use this term good bid'ah, it can only be restricted to what? Something that has its essence, origination in the sunnah already, but perhaps left and then revived. As for new bid'ah, as something completely new which has no foundation, no basis whatsoever in the religion, there's no way we can give it this term as bid'ah hasana. There's no such thing of this kind whatsoever. And Allah Jalla wa'ala knows best for the laughing.
Does committing an act of kufr make you a kafir?
Right.
And if there is a difference, what is it?
That's why I like the questions. Does an act of kufr make you a kafir? And what's the last part?
And if there is a difference, what is it?
And if there is a difference, what is it? Okay, so does every act of kufr make you kafir? The answer is no. Shaykh Albani always said that, everybody who commits kufr doesn't necessitate that kufr is labeled upon him. Kufr, there are 2 types of kufr, my brothers. There's kufr al-asghar and there's kufr al-akbar. Or it's also termed as kufr i'tiqadiyya and kufr amaliyya. Kufr mijazi, kufr aqadiyya. Different terms, different words for these words. And kufr al-akbar is the kufr which takes you out the fold of Islam. As for kufr al-asghar, minor kufr, that does not take you out the fold of Islam. Okay, kufr, minor kufr, or it's also called as kufr in action. Now, how do we know there's 2 types of kufr? Allah Jalla wa'ala said in the Quran, He said, and if 2 believing parties fight each other, Surah Hujurat, then fix the affairs between them. Remember that ayah now. In another hadith he said, Sabab al-Muslim fusuq wa qitaluhu kufr. That abusing a Muslim with names is sin, and fighting him, killing him is kufr. So now you've got 2 seemingly contradictions here, isn't it? The hadith is saying fighting him is kufr, but the ayah in the Quran explains what that means. It said if 2 believing parties fight each other, then fix the affairs to them. So he called the believers who fought each other believers. So it's not kufr that takes you out the fold of Islam, is it? So what type of kufr is it in this hadith? Has to be a different type of kufr, isn't it? It's kufr amali, kufr in action, a minor kufr which doesn't take you out the fold of Islam. Very similar to the ayah in the Quran where Allah Jalla wa'ala said, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Whoever does not judge by the book of Allah, then they are the disbelievers. Ibn Abbas, he said about this ayah, لَيْسَ كَتَظُنُّونَ إِنَّهُ كُفْرٌ دُونُ كُفْرٍ. That this ayah is not what you think it to be. It's a kufr less than the kufr that takes you out the fold of Islam, meaning minor kufr. So now you can see established there's minor kufr exists. Major kufr is no doubt. It exists. Yeah? Major kufr is somebody who disbelieves in Allah Jalla wa Ala, for someone who makes halal what Allah has made haram. This is kufr. Someone who says sihr, magic is halal. This is kufr al-akbar, takes you out the fold of Islam. Someone who says it's permissible in Islam to judge by democracy and secularist law. It's permissible. This is kufr, takes you out the fold of Islam. This is major kufr. So there's a difference between major kufr and minor kufr. So not every kufr that a person does necessarily takes him out the fold of Islam and necessitates that person is a kafir. You have to establish first now, is this kufr al-amali, kufr i'tiqadi, is it kufr minor, is it kufr major? Once you've established that, then the hukum applies accordingly. What was the last part of the ayah? You know the question?
The difference between them.
Well, I think I've answered that. Yeah, I've answered that. The difference between them.
What if you believe that, okay, what you're doing is kufr, but you believe it to be true? You believe it to be
halal.
right? Yeah,
right.
Halal, yeah. Will you be...
Okay, again, if somebody does an act of kufr, thinking that it is permissible and actually an act of Islam, then we do not make takfir of them. until the hujjah, the proof has been established against them. It's ijma' by Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah in our aqidah that we do not make takfir of people who base their kufr upon ta'weel, upon misinterpretation or misunderstandings. It's only after it's been established with them that this is a wrong understanding and this is the correct understanding, and they continue on that field, then this is kufr. Allah could take them out of Islam. But it's not a job for you and me. This is a job for who? The ulama, the scholars, the learned people, who have the ability to do this. So that's regarding, I think I answered inshallah. Jazakallah khair. No, nothing. What is Islam?
I'm just wondering, excessive...
Sorry, Mr. Ayan, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ لَهُمْ رَسُولًا. We're not going to punish anybody until we send to them a messenger.
One is excessive fear of God, of Allah. When you're counting everything that you do, whether it's backbiting or even the slightest thing, you're absolutely terrified. And it terrifies you so much that it starts to affect your iman. And it affects everything that you do, and even to the thing of you have to know your gaze and you're around, where you are now, and you like, if I look, I'm going to be sent, and every time you're continually thinking. So as you're reading the Quran, you're taking it in so much, so literal, it becomes more fear than it does for love. More fear than love. So that's one. And also I think two. If a family member has just come into Islam and she's finding it difficult to come over things after they've been in the kufr lifestyle for a long time, and you get frustrated because you want them to go on to right, but they're not praying at the moment, but you want them to pray, and they haven't prayed they haven't prayed at all, and obviously you haven't given them the books either. What's your advice on that? And the third one is if you give dawah to somebody who's in a mental home, but they understand...
I'm going to forget them last two.
Okay.
Let's do one at a time, yeah? Brother's asking about love and hope, yeah? That's fear and love.
Excessive fear of Allah.
More about fear, he's asking about fear of Allah. Some people, or I think he's asking generally, some people perhaps fear Allah so much that they go to extreme. That they walk the streets, they lower their gaze, they read Quran, and they have so much fear of Allah. For me, I don't see that as something bad. I think that's something good. Daily walking the street, having fear of Allah is good. Reading the Quran and you read the verses of punishment and hellfire and so on and so forth, and having fear of Allah, that's good. But what it is, I think the brother is trying to get at is this: do we worship Allah out of fear only, or do we worship Him with fear and hope? That is what I think the crux of the matter is, because we have to fear Allah. If we didn't fear Allah, we wouldn't lower our gaze, and there would be pure corruption and facade in Middlesbrough. Our movies would be at the head of all the corruption. So that's one thing. We have to fear Allah. The Prophet always reminded, taqwa Allah, fear of Allah, taqwa of Allah, fear of Allah. We have to fear Allah in everything we do, everything we say, and we have to be conscious of Allah Jalla wa Ala in all of our actions that we do. But then at the same time, we have to have hope in His mercy, hope in His forgiveness, hope, in Him. And the way you balance it is, you remind yourselves of the fear of Allah, you remind yourselves of the punishment and anger of Allah, but at the same time you remind yourself that His mercy overrides His wrath, His anger. You remember that Allah His mercy consists of 100 parts. One of them is in this world, in this earth, in this creation. And by that one, the birds get fed, the kuffar get fed, have water, everything, the whole universe runs mercifully. And the 99 is saved for the Day of Judgment for who? For the believers. Only specifically for the believers, so Allah can forgive them their sins. These are things you have to remind yourselves, both, continuously. There is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he went to see a young man who was on his deathbed. And he asked this young man, how do you find yourself? And the man, he said, I find myself fearing Allah Jalla wa Ala, fearing His punishment, and I find myself hoping for his mercy. The Messenger ﷺ said to him that whoever has these two qualities in him, he fears Allah's punishment and hopes for his mercy, it will be not except that Allah saves him from what he fears and grants him what he hopes. So that's how we have to be in our daily lives. But we have to balance. This is from the aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that when we worship Allah, when we conduct our daily lives in worshipping Allah, we love Him out of fear and hope, both. Not one at the exception of the other, without the other. So we don't hope in Allah, Allah's mercy will forgive me, etc. Eyes going everywhere, looking at all the girls, swearing and cheating and selling drugs and maybe go to the pub drinking alcohol. Allah's merciful, He's forgiving, He knows what's in my heart. This is, zindiq, this is wrong, this is terrible. This is a follow of his desires and lusts. And at the same time, we don't have fear of Allah. I have no hope in Allah whatsoever. I'm going to be punished, I'm destroyed, I'm finished. Because if you worship Allah in fear alone, you will have some serious psychological problems, and you will lock yourself in a house and you'll never come out. Why? Because when you think about the fear of Allah alone only, you're going to think of yourself as a person who's doomed, no hope whatsoever. So we have to balance this, okay? The second question was about the sister who was finding it difficult to practice Islam because of the jahiliyyah that she had, and she's coming in slowly, and you really want her to pray and she's not praying. The answer to this question is already preceded, is that إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ حَبَّبْتَ. You can't guide whom you want. Guidance is from Allah alone. That even means prayer. Guidance to prayer is from Allah alone. Your job is to lead by example, give the message, and hope good. Don't stress yourself out. You're not praying. Give the dawah. Don't get stressed out. Don't go, oh, she's not praying, my family's not praying, they're going to go to hellfire. You don't know. You don't know. You really don't know what's going to happen to you, let alone them. Do you remember the prostitute who gave water to a dog, and she was forgiven all her sins because of that? So don't lose hope, and just give dawah, and hope for them, and lead by good example, and keep on at them without getting without getting stressed and depressed over it, okay? Exactly.
Last question.
Alright, yeah, that was the last question. Oh, you go.
What would you say for those of us brothers and sisters who are fasting in the month of Ramadan but aren't praying, taking into consideration the Prophet ﷺ said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of a person's fast who commits sins, and then some of we went on to mention, and taking into consideration what the scholars of Islam said about leaving off to pray, and what advice would you give?
Yeah. What advice would I give to the person who fasts but does not pray? In the light of what the scholars have said, from what we know, Ikhwan, is that a person who fasts and does not pray, his fast is not accepted. He's just going hungry for no reason, thirsty for no reason. The salah is the pillar before fasting. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen, and he said, إِنَّكَ سَتَأْتِي أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ. He said, "O Mu'adh, verily you're going to come to the people of the book. فليكن أول ما تدعو إلى شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وإنهم أعطاكم في ذلك فعلمهم أن الله قد افترض عليهم 5 صلوات في الليل والنهار وإنهم أعطاكم في ذلك فعلمهم أن الله قد افترض عليهم الصوم and Hajj and Zakat and Hajj." The end of that hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. He said, "O Mu'adh, verily you're going to come to the people of the book, so that the first thing you teach them is that no one has the right to be worshipped except Allah. And if they accept that from you, only if they accept that from you, then teach them that Allah has made obligatory upon them 5 daily prayers in the day and the night. And only if they accept that from you, then teach them that Allah has made obligatory upon them Sawm, fasting. And only if they accept that from you, then teach them Zakat. And if they accept that, then Hajj." In this order, the ulama have said this is the dawah of Islam to Muslims and non-Muslims, that we give dawah in this stage. So a person who jumps the gun, he doesn't have his tawheel in place, doesn't have his salat in place, his fasting and zakat and hajj is futile. Allah Jalla knows best. However, at the same time, we encourage them. We say to them, brother, come and pray. Use this Ramadan as your training ground for salah. Do the obligatory prayers, if not the sunnah. Do all the obligatory prayers. And we encourage them, we want to help them. We don't want to push them out the door and say, your fast not accepted, your prayers not accepted, leave. No, this is not the way of dawah, Ikhwan. We're living in a time, unfortunately, where the majority of general Muslims believe what the brother asked in this question. So what do we do now? Tell them, go around one by one, tell them, oh, your fast not accepted, yours not accepted, yours not accepted, you might go and eat, go and drink, go to sleep. Is this dawah? This is not dawah Islamiyah. وَدُعُوا إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَمَوْعِظَةٍ حَسَنَةٍ وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom, with hikmah, and good preaching, and argue with them in the best way. So hikmah, wisdom, say, come brother, come, pray. Come and pray with us. You don't have to tell him his fast is not accepted. Give him dawah nicely and encourage him.
My question is quite specific. In certain mosques, after the prayer, Imam would stand and then people will go handshake and say salam. You can look at it several angles. You say Afshu Salam is there. So from that point of view, is it okay? It's not okay at all. I mean, where does it fall in terms of bid'ah? It's not. Is it ibadah or sunnah?
Okay. Basically, the brother's asking about some masajids that after the salah is over, then all the musallin, they go and they shake the hand of the imam. Is there any basis for this in the religion? Absolutely no basis whatsoever. There's not even an iota of a hadith of the Prophet where he said, where the Sahaba did this to him. When he finished prayer, that all the Sahaba went and shake his hand. Never had they done this. There's no saying of the Prophet, no action, there's not even approval, nothing. This is an innovation, and every innovation is a sending astray. You know, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala narration from the Prophet Man ahdatha fi amrina ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad. That whoever invents something in this matter of ours, which is not from it, it will be rejected. So if they're hoping for reward from that action, then it's rejected. It's not accepted whatsoever. There's no good deed, nothing for it. And you know, you have to be careful. Every time we add something in this religion, if you innovate something in this religion, you lose a sunnah. You add something into the religion, you're going to lose something from the religion, because it's complete. It's like a jar that's full. You try to shut a plastic bag. That goes in a plastic bag. It's full. You push it from one side, try to put some more things. It's going to pop out this way. It's going to pop out that way. Make a hole in the bag. Someone's going to fall out. This is what happens. Now I'll tell you. Correct me if I'm wrong. When they go to make salam, have they forgotten the tasbih? Haven't they? So they lost the tasbih, subhanallah 33, 133, Allah 33 times, and they got to give salam to the imam. Yeah. Have they, by going to give salam, you invent something, you're going to lose something. And on top of that, it's inventing something in the religion is dangerous. This is how the religion of the Nasara, the Christians, got corrupted. Exactly from this thing, inventing in the religion, so much that they began to invent kufr and shirk in their religion. And then it became as it was now. Judaism, exactly the same thing as well. We should be different as Muslims, preserve the sunnah, preserve the religion. Be really, really, what's the word? Hirs, determined, being careful with our sunnah, being very, very careful. Allah, jazakallah khair.
The last question, just following up, what he said. In many places after they pray, people say Assalamu alaikum after they have done all the sunnahs. They shake their hands and say
yeah. Same thing. That's where they get that from anyway. They turn to the right after the salat. They say Taqabbalallah, they shake hands with the person on the right and the left. There's no basis for this. No basis whatsoever. Innovation. When he says Taqabbal, what are you supposed to say after taslim? After Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What's the dua? Allahumma anta salam, minka salam. Salam. All the du'as, tasbih is gone, everything's gone. You forget all that and just Taqabbalallah, bid'ah, left sunnah. Allah understand.
I try to say Jazakumullah khairan to Sheikh Brother Abdul Qadir for coming today all the way from Luton to deliver this very beneficial reminder. Jazakumullah khairan. And also I want to remind everyone the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the Muslim of Imam Ahmad, he said, he who does not thank the people does not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I want to say Jazakumullah khairan to all of the brothers and sisters who have attended today. I hope you can take away some benefit, inshallah, and you've learned some lessons from today as well, inshallah. Now, the next talk, inshallah, in the series, Sharia explained earlier that it was the first of 3 talks that we've got coming up in the next 10 days. The next talk is going to be on Thursday next week, on the 1st of August, the same time, inshallah, around 6 o'clock, straight after Asr Salah, inshallah. That's going to be delivered by Ustad Muhammad Tim Humble, who is a graduate of Medina. He actually is a graduate of Medina, alhamdulillah, and he's going to be talking about the importance of Salah, inshallah. So please, make the intention to come along on Thursday, and benefit, take away some lessons as well on Thursday, inshallah, like you have today. And you know this is the blessed month of Ramadan, so please, brothers, make that conscious effort to increase yourself in taqwa, inshallah. May Allah make it easy for you all. Jazakumullah khairan again, inshallah. We'll see you on Thursday.